And we're back. Been a busy couple of days, so I wasn't able to post anything. But we're back. We're almost done with the chapters. We're on chapter 21 right now, Antiquities of Alexander. So this will be another lion's share analysis, chapter medium dive, as we're calling it. For an introduction, again, no major clue, no boots on the ground clue, nothing groundbreaking. I asked a couple of questions in here. I asked about one, the whole the rod, the staff, the medical aspect seems very interesting. But this one right here, JCB put some special emphasis. So as far as chapters that JCB has direct text emphasizing, this one is one of them. There's probably maybe 3 off the top of my head chapters that JCB is like, this one holds something big, and this is one of them. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Chapter 21, we're on page 180. The title is Antiquities of Alexander. I'm always a huge fan of the alliteration right there, the A and A. I like it. Make it make sense. Pretty interesting. The quote there, we bring up myth, right? And there was been a theme or topic in the last couple chapters about fairy tales. So we're looking into that whole aspect. And then we're going to go into the Greek and Roman pantheon a little bit, some of the gods. So let's go ahead and get into that. As far as the first chapter, as far as the first paragraph, he mentions his kids, and from the first 6 chapters, we're kind of building a roadmap. Anytime that he mentions his kids specifically, because of the whole fatherhood aspect, we're gonna pay close attention to that. So, and if you look on page 69, you'll see where it says that third paragraph down. As I have grown older, I have found inspiration in fatherhood, music, and writing. I'm adding that. I've been inspired by travel, adventure, nature, and writing children's books. So that's why, that's kind of a reason why. And this is chapter 6, so it's still part of the first 6 kind of introductory roadmap chapters. So that's why I include, whenever we're looking for clues for the book, we'll see an indicator. In my opinion, he brings up his children. So, well, Kimberly's mentioned a few times, but because he didn't say anything about being a husband early on in the chapters, although if he does say that, you can bring that up in the chat. I do think that children are a good indicator, especially because, he's saying fatherhood, right? He found inspiration in fatherhood. That's what we're looking for, is inspiration. One of the things we're looking for. So that's kind of why we key in on when he mentions his children. All right, so 180 right off the bat, my children, first 2 words, trying to understand the world around them. Why do bees sting? Where does daddy go when he dies? Kind of a big jump there. Again with the bees, right? There's, it sounds silly to even mention, like, oh, the theme is bees. And I don't want to say it, but I'm kind of saying it without saying it. There's a lot of bee references and symbolism in this book. Very, very interesting. I'll explore that later. Not in this video, like another time. All right, moving on about throughout history, cultures have relied on mythology. So we're going to explain the world around them. So we're going to go along on a journey in this chapter of him using mythology to explain stuff to us, because the chapter is called Make It Make Sense. Goes into Alexander. All right, Alexander the Great. Talks about gold leaf. Kind of moving on. Nothing really jumping out at me there. Going on. Once about halfway down page 182, starts to get pretty interesting. This is where we get into kind of mythology. He breaks down every time. He breaks down some symbolism of leaves in page 182. Right, he goes into the laurel tree, talks about olive and oak leaves. I read it a few times. While the story of Daphne is an interesting story, I don't really see much symbolism related to treasure there, so I'm not really focusing on that one yet. The only thing I did really find is the emphasis on poet laureate, and if we're looking to translate certain poems in the book, Joy's Serenade being a big one. Amelia Earhart's in there too, but it wasn't written for this book, so he could have hit something in there. And then people don't like to use, because JCB has said in the interview about using part 1 to translate part 2. But if you are someone who likes to do that, I'm not going to go too much into that now. But anyways, if you're looking to translate poems in the book, this would be a pretty good paragraph to focus in on. Page 182 about the different, specifically the laurel tree. All right. All right. Here's where we get into some deeper waters, and only because I had to read this chapter a few times, and I really had to think over what I want to say and how I want to present it. There's a lot of themes and a lot of rabbit holes people are going off of just based on these 2 or 3 pages right here. As delicately as I can say this, because I try to keep it to a PG audience. If you know what's on page 133 and 134, it's probably the raciest JCB is in the book. I'm a little bit surprised by his word choice with his PG he's been the rest of the book. I mean, he's a children's book author. He has a children's book publishing company. It's nothing crazy out there. Like, if you were to rate this, probably PG-13. I don't think it would get an R rating. But again, so looking at it from a clue analysis, not a content analysis, what can we get from here? And I will say, I really focused in on page, about the goats, right? Because it's so, it's so prominent. I would say it's without... Starting from page 183, 184, and 185, it's like 3 pages worth of goats. And he even says, if you still doubt the power associated with goats in ancient Greece, look no further than one of Greek mythology's great origin stories. Greeks believed the world as they knew it may not have existed without a goat. And when he describes the aspects of the goat, most of them, I took like an introductory to Latin a long time ago. And so, yeah, most of that sounds kind of right. Have a passing interest in ancient Rome and Greece. There is, however, a sentence, where does it say? Page 183, starting with Dionysus, goes on, goats had the most fun. They drank wine, they laughed, and they met in dark rooms or in wide open spaces. It did not matter. So that particular phrase stood out to me. Read a few times, looked for some meaning. I read the rest of the chapter. I didn't really see meeting in dark rooms. The only thing you could kind of tie that in is if you want to talk about specifically the cults, like the Roman cults associated with gods, and maybe their temples were dark. Again, I don't really see too much. And even if you do a Google and do a brief history or look into the gods, especially the ones he mentions, Dionysus, Pan, there's not really too much specifically pointing out to meeting in dark rooms. It just seems very interesting to put out there. And then I tied it into the moon rock, which is page 19. And we talk about, all right, so we're looking at meteor hunters. And the analogy when I went through there is JCB is describing the actions of meteor hunters, and we're supposed to take from those actions what we're as treasure hunters supposed to be, right? There's a treasure hunter, meteor hunter connection. And he says, page 168, there are many places where one can search for meteorites. Desert, flat expanses are still the easiest and most likely place to find a meteor, right? Which is, it's true, right? Flat, it's easier to notice a crater in a wide open flat space than the suburbs or a forest. But I don't know, for me, that just seemed a little bit of a tie-in. Again, not really much to go off of there. It just seems if we're looking for details, for stuff that sticks out, that phrase right there stuck out to me a little bit. They drank wine, they laughed, and they met in dark rooms or in wide open spaces. It did not matter. Just seems odd. Moving on to the big thing I want to talk about today is the Greek god of healing, called Asclepios, all right? So this one led me down a pretty interesting rabbit hole, and this is, I think, pretty easy to follow along. Most of us have seen the symbol before, whether you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, or you've seen an EMT uniform, or an ambulance go by, or a hospital. There's just a lot of places that use the symbol of the rod or staff with a snake intertwined around it. And going on here, it looks like there's 2 major themes. There's a rod with 2 snakes, right? And I think I'm going to put some pictures in here, edit it, and I'll put them in the back. There's a rod with 2 snakes and wings on top, which is specifically tied to I think tied to Hermes. And then there's a rod with one snake around it. And all these have different names. All right, I got it right here. And I'm going to put this at the end of the chapter, at the end of the video. So you can, unless I figure out how to get fancy and put a video while I'm talking, like in the corner somewhere. But so you have the caduceus, right? The caduceus, which is a rod with two snakes, wings on top. And then you have the rod of Asclepius, which is a staff, a rod with one snake around. Okay, and so JCB credits, which is very interesting to me. All right, so follow this train right here. JCB credits the medical symbol, right, with the Greek god of healing, Asclepios, right? It says this rod with its snake is used today as a symbol for the American Medical Association, right? So it goes into that. I'm pretty sure JCB with his upbringing is aware of one of the maybe not top 10 stories of the Bible, but it's pretty well known story, I think so, of Moses creating a staff and putting a bronze serpent on and people looking onto it and being healed from snake bites, right? I would have thought that's pretty well known. And even a precursory Google search, Wikipedia rabbit hole dives down. I mean, you can date the story of the Jewish tradition, the Torah, when it was written and when it takes place, kind of predates the Greek myth and Asclepios, right? So it just seemed interesting to me that he wouldn't mention it in this chapter, or that he kind of credits, and maybe he's just mentioning that specific symbol, which is, again, you could even base that off of, why not say a symbol for medical professions or anything related to. So what can we draw from this? All right, so here's, again, it's fun to go down rabbit holes, and we can spend all day talking about it, but the main point that you're watching the video for is, what do we do from that, or where can we go from there? Whenever someone tells me, hey, Froggy, I got this really good solve, I listen, it's cool at every solve you listen to, but the question in the back of my mind is always like, where's the boots on the ground, or what's the next step, or when are we going to get the treasure, right? So from the story that JCB is writing us, I'm thinking that maybe the symbol Asclepios might have something to do with an area that we're going to go boots on the ground, or there might be a building with this symbol nearby, or maybe looking into the American Medical Association, because you could have picked a lot of organizations, some even worldwide, some international, that use that symbol, all right, or use the other one, the one with one snake, not two snakes with the wings on it. And as far as just more information from the rabbit hole, it looks like there's even documentation predating the story in the Bible with Moses of some papyrus found in Egypt with a depiction of someone trying to pull a worm or some sort of parasite out of a leg, and using baiting the worm to come out of a wound or a hole, and then when it comes out, affixing it to a twig or a small branch, and then slowly rolling it out, because you don't want to yank it, you don't want to cut it, you don't want the parasite to go back in, so you have to kind of like over an hour or two coax that parasite or worm out of this wound, right? And so they use a stick to kind of like wind it up and get it out. So very gross, very interesting. I just found that was pretty interesting. And whenever he's talking about something that's used as a symbol or something, I don't know. Okay, so going on, the other thing I found pretty interesting was the talk about Hercules, right? And the reason why is because as much as he spends a good amount of text about goats and all the sexual cults in his writings there, the picture on the first page, which I always want to focus on what he shows in the beginning, is Hercules, right? This picture right here. So very intentional to choose. Again, if it is intentional, I mean, if not, there's some train of thought that says, JCB put the text and the photos that he wanted and left a lot of choices to be made in the hands of his formatter, the publisher's team, and how they assemble things, because that would explain why some photos are on certain pages, right? But But I don't know. I like to think that JCB, as much as this is a passion project for him, he specifically put certain pictures on certain pages, and one of them prominent. So this is the one that's for this chapter, right? It's Hercules, and it kind of fits the theme that I think that he likes to bury clues deep in the text. He doesn't have them right in the front. He doesn't have them right in the back. He kind of hides them in layers, right? So I see that as wrapping a clue or hint in layers of stories. So you certainly have to dig a little bit to get to the one about Hercules. But what can we find about Hercules? Reading the story, very unfair, right? A god drives him to madness to kill his family, and then the gods punish him for killing his family, that they drove him to madness. But what I like about the story of Hercules is it's right before where he talks about, this is the key, right? Okay, so calm down, because I'm getting excited, because this is the part to me that, it gets my brain going. Deep breath. We're on page 186. At the very top, he starts talking about, well, Hercules is introduced in the last paragraph, page before, okay? But we're talking about Hercules. Talks about how he's being punished. He was tricked by the gods. Then it goes down. Third paragraph from the bottom starts with, if you've been thoughtful. You may have considered that a chapter titled Make It Make Sense might also be a reference to figuring out the solution for the location of the treasure I've hidden. All right. Eyes open. Let's key in. Let's lock in. This is, again, one of the 3 chapters so far that tell you, where he kind of breaks the fourth wall, addresses the readers directly, and it's like, hey, you're looking for treasure, right? Focus in. So let's read over what he's saying. If you've been thoughtful, you may have considered that a chapter titled Make It Make Sense might also be a reference to figuring out the solution for the location of the treasure I've hidden. So again, not that there's necessarily a clue here, but he says a chapter titled, and that the title Make It Make Sense is a reference to figuring out the solution for the location of the treasure. My hope is that this chapter can help you do just that. But you may have to look beyond just ancient myths and legends and consider more. And then we go on a little bit more when we read about this. Mice prefer cheese. They don't. I always thought they did. And then we goes on to this last part, which I think is, I kind of go back and forth that he restructured the order of his chapters as he got closer to assembling the book. And what I mean by that is, I feel some of these later chapters, he knows he's coming to the end of part 1, and he has points that he wants to make, big points. Philosophical points, humanitarian, that's the word I'm looking for. Humanitarian points, right, that he wants to make. And so he's getting to the end of the book, so he has to make these points. We like the story with the rose, and not all roses are bad, and if you change your perspective, you'll see that some roses are good, right? There's kind of an overlying thought of, humanity and, seeing the good in people. Well, here we go down that rabbit hole again, right? Page 187. And he even ties in, he brings his children in again. Okay, so pay attention anytime he brings his kids in, because that's fatherhood, right? That's talking about him. And this is where he gets his inspiration from. We tie that back into chapter 6. Again, the more we read these chapters, the more we analyze, the more tie-ins to the book. I'm always excited when we find something in the real world, right, that matches something in the book. But I'm more excited when I find something in a later chapter that references something in the beginning of a chapter. All right, so again, the main point from this last page is, the human condition. We all bleed dark red, cry salt-filled tears. If you want to focus on the cry salt-filled tears, you can turn back to, it's not Diana, Daphne, right? Going back to, what god was that? Apollo. And, nope, not lied, Amethyst. It's, okay, Dionysus, yeah, sorry, it was Dionysus. So Dionysus, up to some shenanigans, he ends up turning a fair maiden into quartz, right? Again, we look into his smoky quartz that he mentioned a couple of chapters ago. Dionysus was so overcome with her beauty, he cried tears of impassioned remorse. His tears fell onto her, creating her crystalline body into purple amethyst, all right? So that's a little tie-in right there. We all cry salt-filled tears, laugh with heartfelt joy, and have longings that we want to fulfill. All right, again, there's another mention of joy. So this kind of the main point from this last chapter, if you were to summarize it, I mean, the last page on this chapter is, hey, we all bleed red, right? So don't look at the differences, race, religion, culture, or political affiliations. Those are the four that he lists, right? The bottom of page 186, top of 187, talking about his children then ask him. Then he would invite his children to become better listeners. And then, of course, from the end, we do our segue to the next chapter, which is going to be a love story. All right, which is only 2 chapters left. All right, so what? Thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Froggy, for saying all that stuff. How does that help me? All right, how does it help you? So it depends. I'm kind of speaking to like 2 or 3 different people, 2 or 3 different groups of people here who are watching these videos. One, you just, I don't know, want to see what outfit I'm wearing. That's a joke. But 2, you are trying to work on your own threads that have nothing to do with stuff I'm putting out, but you like where I'm pulling information from or how I'm pulling it, and you want to apply that to you, okay? So if you're following down that thread, the things you would look for is stuff inside this chapter that refer back to each other, right? Crying salt-filled tears, we're all human. That's him making a point to his kids, right? So that's fatherhood. And you look back in the chapter for where you see that, and it's Dionysus crying and turning that into amethyst, right? Which is purple, which if you're part of the Lilac Club, then you're looking down that whole rabbit hole. So that's one way. Or you could also look down further in the book as a whole to see what other chapters talk about. Start from this chapter, like that would say where the goats find stuff in the dark and in wide open spaces, and you want to look at the meteorite hunters who also find stuff in wide open spaces. So that would be one way to do it. All right, so that's one group who you're trying to follow along how I'm finding stuff or what I consider stuff found, and you're trying to replicate that. All right, so again, that's my advice to you, is to look at references and chapters within the chapter, look at references to other chapters in the book, look at the photos, right? Hercules is featured very prominently. I mean, it's an eye-catching photo, but so are the necklaces and the treasure pieces, right? Most of the time, he likes to put something that's in the treasure first and out there, right? If you look back at the six-figure gemstone, birthstone, that was that chapter had that brilliantly cut smoky quartz, I think it was, and that was prominent right there. And there wasn't a lot of detail, right? Because someone said, well, the reason why he put that photo of Hercules up there is because it's got a lot going on. I mean, that's not always the case. If you look back, many of the images that are first and foremost out there with a title page are very basic. And by basic, I mean like it's one item. There's not like a lot going on. It's a gem, a stone, a something, right? Or even in the case of like the shipwreck, it'd be an AI photo, as far as I believe. Okay, so that's the second group, right? So the next group of people would be you're actually following along because you agree with what I'm saying, or you're gonna follow. You're gonna try to put that in your solve. So if you're trying to put that in your solve, you're looking into Hercules. You're looking into how can that symbol, right, of the Greek. I always get them mixed up. Where did my thing go? It's Caduceus. It's not Caduceus. It's Caduceus. Maybe it is. You're looking at this, right? I keep saying I'm gonna put it in the video, but just in case I don't, I do want to share so you can see that this is the one that's mentioned in the book specifically. No, got it backwards. This is the one that's mentioned in the book specifically, right? Because it's the Asclepius. The other one is another symbol that's used often, right? With the twin and the wings, and they're both different. They both have their own Greek god associated with it, but they both are used similarly with hospitals, EMTs, ambulances, uniforms, anything related to organizations that have to do with it, have to do with medical or kind of healing. So again, so if you're following along that, you're looking for maybe a place or maybe healing as a reference. You might look in the book for something to do where he talks about healing and see how that goes into it. Some of the crystals or gems he talks about have healing properties. I don't know. And then we're focusing in on what he says this chapter may help you, if you make it make sense, right? Which let me read that part again. When he says, what do you say? Hold on. Oh, there it is. He says, bottom of 186. He says, if you've been thoughtful, you may have considered that a chapter titled Make It Make Sense might also be a reference to figuring out the solution for the location of the treasure I've hidden. I'll be honest, I didn't think that. When I looked at the table of contents, if I'm looking down the table of contents and I want to say to myself, which chapter would have, the biggest clues, or where would I go first, if I'm not going to read it in order, I would look at maybe Six-Figure Birthstone, right? Choosing a new perspective. I would look at Rubies to Wear. Inspiration is welcome. Again, inspiration, fatherhood. Think about that. I would look for Blaze the Path. Joys in the details. Make good choices. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 chapters I'd put before Make It Make Sense, right? But he's telling us, this is JCB talking to us, breaking the fourth wall, that this chapter would have a reference to figuring out the solution, right? And while most of the chapters bring up a history, and from the introduction a couple of videos ago, we talked about you may find clues in the histories of the treasure. This one's kind of saying, look beyond that, right? You might have to look beyond just ancient myths and legends and consider more. So how would we do that? How would we look beyond a myth, a legend? I mean, beyond the great beyond, space. If I told you there's a clue in this chapter, but you have to look beyond the myths, the legends, look beyond the Greek gods, look beyond Hercules. What's beyond it? I don't know. I haven't really figured out that part yet. So, but if that's the kind of the questions I'm asking myself, if you want to go down that camp. All right, that's all I kind of wanted to cover today. A lot of stuff happening with the smaller boxes. Feels like things are ramping up a little bit. I don't know if the weather's getting good in a few spots. I'm seeing a lot more people are hitting the Pokemon trail and reporting back with pictures and images and videos. But again, I don't have anything groundbreaking there yet. All right, I hope this video shared some things to you. And I will say, I did have a conversation with a little bit of a critic, I think it was on Reddit, about how I speak and how I get clues across. And he has a valid point. Like, I went back and watched some of the stuff. I just don't like to, this is supposed to be fun for me. So I want to do it how I want to do it. But at the same point, if I'm trying to reach an audience and if they're not able to understand the way I deliver it, then maybe I should reconsider how I deliver it. I'm not very structured. I kind of just, I put together notes, I read, I study, I come up with clues. But then when it comes time to like go live and hit the record, I like to just flow off of however my mind's going, which can be good or bad, right? Sometimes if I'm tired, I'll have more pauses. My train derails. I'll say but sometimes if I'm locked in, I do like the feeling that I get of I'm on something. And a lot of times I discover new things as I'm talking. It happens quite often. I have notes, I have clues, I want something I want to share. And as I'm speaking it out sometimes, because sometimes it's the first time I speak it out loud. I don't always bounce everything off my wife, or I don't really have a bunch of friends who are in this hunt that I call all the time and speak off of. So if I haven't done a Discord speakeasy or like a chat room, a lot of times my first time saying the thoughts out loud is here to the camera. And even though I write it out or I think it out, something happens when you speak it. And so neurons are created and firing, and I go down like a new rabbit hole. So that's kind of the exciting part for me as I'm doing it. And I don't know if I would lose some of that if I wrote out a script and followed. But I will try to be maybe a little bit more structured in the delivery and the approach, because the end goal is I want you, the viewer, to be able to follow my path and my thinking and my logic, and also be able to digest what I'm putting out there, right? And if I'm just bouncing all over the place or rambling, that's not going to happen. So just a little side note at the end of things. All right, guys, take care. Thanks as always for watching. I really appreciate the subscribers, man. We're up to 950. So let's see if we can hit 1,000. How much days left in the month? I think we got time. I think it's the 17th, 18th. Let's see if we can hit 1,000. All right, over before. So if you're watching this video, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I think most of you guys have. Likes and comments are always appreciated. The likes, I'm not sure what they really do, other than everybody else asks for them. So I guess I can ask for them too. But the comments I really appreciate, because it lets me know, one, if you're following what I'm putting down. Two, lets me know if there's questions that you're asking that I haven't answered or even thought of. So as always, I appreciate the comments. All right, guys, take care. Bye.
Now listen, all you treasure hunters, searching all around for plunder. Do you need some help to be your best? There's something that you're trying to find, but you're about to lose your mind. So come on, listen in to Estes Quest. Estes Quest, the show where he'll be sharing clues. Estes Quest will chase away your searcher's blues. He's solving puzzles with a smile. He'll help your theory